She had cleaned courtrooms for 19 years. He had just passed the bar. She was sitting in the gallery, 4th row from the back, wearing a dress she had bought with money that should have gone to the electric bill. He was standing at the front of the room with his right hand raised and his left hand on a Bible, and he was about to be sworn in as an attorney in the state of Georgia. She was still smiling. She did not yet know what he would say in his speech afterward. Her hands were folded in her lap, the knuckles dry and cracked across the top from years of chemical cleaners, and she was holding them still because they had started shaking 3 months ago, and she did not want anyone to see. Quinton Hargrove woke at 3:50 every morning, not to an alarm. The alarm was set for 4:00, but his body had stopped waiting for it years ago, the way bodies stop waiting for permission when survival becomes routine. He swung his legs off the mattress and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark and pressed both palms flat against his knees and held them there for 10 seconds. This was not stretching. This was negotiation. His knees had been negotiating with him since he was 42, and the negotiations had gotten more difficult every year, and he was now 51 and the knees were winning. He dressed without turning on the light. Gray work pants, white undershirt, the navy blue custodial uniform with his name stitched on the chest in yellow thread. The stitching was coming loose on the queue. He had meant to fix it. He had been meaning to fix it for 7 months. He ate 2 pieces of white bread with margarine, standing at the counter of the apartment on Bankhead. He drank water from the tap. He took 3 aspirin from the bottle beside the sink, and swallowed them dry because the aspirin was for the knees. And the knees could not wait for water. The apartment was a 1-bedroom on the 2nd floor of a building, where the hallway smelled like cooking oil, and the stairwell light had been out since February. He had moved here 11 years ago, when Heen sold the house. The house had been small, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a front porch with a swing that creaked when Shayla sat on it reading her library books in the summer evenings. He had bought it with 14 years of saving. He sold it because Shayla's tuition at Emory was $58,000 a year, and the scholarship covered less than half, and the distance between less than half and all of it was the house. The house became a check. The check became a semester. The semester became a grade point average. The grade point average became a law school acceptance letter. The math was clean. The math was always clean. It was everything underneath the math that was not. He drove to the Fulton County Courthouse in the dark. The parking lot was empty, except for the security guard's truck and the other custodial staff arriving for the morning shift. He clocked in at 4:45. He started on the 3rd floor because the 3rd floor had Judge Morrison's courtroom, and Judge Morrison held court at 8:30 and expected the floors waxed and the benches wiped and the jury box dusted before she arrived. Quinton had never met Judge Morrison. He had cleaned her courtroom for 11 years, and she had never spoken to him, and he had never expected her to, because the nature of his work was to be finished before the people who used the rooms arrived. His labor existed in the negative space. You noticed it only when it was absent. He mopped the marble floors with the specific rhythm of a man whose body has memorized a task so completely that the mind is free to go elsewhere. And where the mind went, most mornings, was to Shayla. Shayla Renee Hargrove, at 6 years old, sitting cross-legged on the living room carpet, with a stack of books taller than her torso, reading aloud to no one because the reading was not for an audience. The reading was for the words. She collected words the way other children collected rocks or bottle caps. She liked words that were long and specific. She once asked him at dinner what the word jurisdiction meant. He did not know. He told her he did not know. She looked it up in the dictionary he had bought at a garage sale and read him the definition, and then used it in a sentence, and he laughed because the sentence was better than anything he could have constructed, and she was 6. Shayla at 12, asking him to quiz her on vocabulary for the county spelling bee. He held the word list in the kitchen while she stood in the doorway and spelled each word with her eyes closed. Not because she needed to close her eyes, but because closing them made it harder, and she wanted harder. She won the bee. She won it again at 13. At 14, she told him she wanted to be a lawyer. She said it the way she said most things, directly and without performance. "I want to argue cases in a courtroom." He looked at her across the kitchen table, and he saw something that he recognized because he had seen it in the mirror 30 years earlier. The specific expression of a person who knows what they want and does not yet know what it costs. He said, "Then we will figure it out." He did not know what figure it out would require. He learned. Shayla was accepted to Emory University on a partial academic scholarship. The acceptance letter arrived on a Thursday. She opened it at the kitchen table and read it aloud, and when she finished, she looked at him, and her face was doing something he had never seen it do before. It was trying to hold two things at once. Joy and the understanding that joy has a price. She said, "Dad, it is too expensive." He said, "Do not worry about that part. That part is mine. That part was the house. That part was the porch swing and the front yard and the bedroom where he had sat beside her bed reading library books until she fell asleep. He sold it in August. He moved into the apartment on Bankhead." He did not tell Shayla the house was gone until she came home for Thanksgiving, and he picked her up at the bus station and drove to an address she did not recognize. She sat in the car outside the apartment building and looked at it, and then looked at him and said nothing. She carried her bag up the stairs. She looked at the one bedroom, the small kitchen, the mattress on the floor, because he had not bought a bed frame, because a bed frame was not in the budget, and the budget did not have margins. She said, "You sold this." He said, "I sold a building. You are not a building." She did not argue. She understood what he had done, and she understood that arguing with it would diminish it, and she would not do that. She set her bag down. She cooked dinner that night, rice and chicken thighs with hot sauce, the meal he had made for her every Thursday when she was growing up, because chicken thighs were cheap, and Thursday was the day before payday, and the meal had become a ritual that neither of them had named but both of them honored. They ate at the kitchen counter because there was no table. He asked about her classes. She talked about constitutional law and civil procedure, and a professor who had told her she had an instinct for argument. He listened the way he always listened, with his full attention and no interruptions, because listening was the thing he could give her that cost nothing and was worth everything. After dinner, she washed the dishes. He dried them. They stood side by side at the sink, and the apartment that was too small for a table was not too small for this. The second job started in Shayla's junior year. Tuition went up. Books went up. The scholarship did not go up. Quinton picked up evening shifts cleaning offices at a corporate park in Buckhead. He finished at the courthouse at 3:30, drove across the city, started at the office park at 5, finished at 10. He drove home. He ate whatever was in the refrigerator, usually bread, sometimes leftover rice. He sat on the edge of the mattress and unlaced his boots, left foot first, right foot second, the same order every night because the order was the only structure the day offered at that hour, and structure was what kept him from lying down on the floor and not getting up. Before he turned off the light, he opened the drawer of the nightstand. Inside was a photograph. Shayla at 6, holding the dictionary from the garage sale, grinning with her 2 front teeth missing. On the back, in his handwriting, a sentence he had written the night she won the spelling bee. "She is going to be something this world is not ready for." He read it. He put it back. He turned off the light. His knees were getting worse. He knew this the way anyone who has lived in a body long enough knows when the body is changing its terms. The left knee locked when he climbed stairs. The right knee swelled after long shifts. He wrapped them both in ace bandages every morning, 2 wraps per knee, tight enough to stabilize but not so tight that the circulation slowed. He had learned this from a nurse at the free clinic on Forsyth Street. The nurse had told him he needed an MRI. He had not gone. The MRI was not in the envelope. The envelope lived in the top drawer of the dresser. It contained whatever was left after Shayla's tuition payment and the rent and the utilities and the aspirin and the gas for the car that needed new brakes but would not get them because brakes were not in the envelope this month or last month or the month before. Shayla started law school and Quinton started disappearing, not from her life, from himself. He dropped weight because groceries were a flexible category, and flexibility meant eating less. His uniforms got loose. The belt needed a new hole. He punched it with a screwdriver because a leather punch was not in the envelope. His hands developed a tremor, fine and steady, visible only when he held them still, which he rarely did because stillness was not something his schedule permitted. He was always moving. Moving was the only verb he trusted. Then the Henderson family arrived. Shayla met Blake Henderson in her second year of law school. Blake was in her section. He was smart and confident and had the particular ease of a person who has never had to calculate whether he could afford both lunch and a textbook in the same week. His mother was a woman named Diane Henderson. His father was Graham Henderson, managing partner at a firm downtown whose name was on the building. They had a house in Druid Hills with a library and a dining room that seated 12 and a kitchen, where nothing was ever cooked out of necessity. Everything in that kitchen was cooked out of preference. Diane Henderson was not unkind. This is important. What happened was not cruelty. It was gravity, the slow pull of a world that has more to offer toward a person who is ready to receive it. Gravity does not intend to pull. It simply does. Shayla went to the Henderson house for dinner the first time on a Saturday in October. She came home to the apartment on Bankhead the following morning and told Quinton about it the way you describe a foreign country to someone who has never traveled. The table had candles. There was wine. Mr. Henderson asked her about her interest in litigation, and when she answered, he nodded and said, "You remind me of myself at your age," and the word myself landed on Shayla in a way that Quinton's encouragement never had. Not because Quinton's was less real. Because Graham Henderson was already inside the world Shayla was trying to enter, and his recognition came with coordinates attached. Diane began calling Shayla directly, not through Blake. Directly. She invited her to brunches, introduced her to partners at the firm, arranged an internship for the summer that Quinton had not known about until Shayla mentioned it in passing on a phone call. The phone calls had once been long. Shayla would describe a case she was studying, a professor's comment, a mock trial she had won. Quinton would listen while he mopped floors or wiped down desks, and the calls were the part of the day when the work felt least like work because her voice was in his ear, and her voice was the reason for all of it. The calls got shorter. The last one had been 4 minutes. The one before that she had not picked up. He had called on a Wednesday evening from the Buckhead office park, standing in an empty conference room with the mop, leaning against the wall, and the cleaning cart in the hallway, and the phone had rung 6 times and gone to voicemail, and he had hung up without leaving a message because he did not know what to say to a person whose voice he used to hear for an hour and now could not reach at all. Diane bought Shayla a suit, navy blue, tailored, the kind with a silk lining, and buttons that had weight. Shayla wore it to the apartment on Bankhead one weekend, and Quinton saw it from across the room the way you see something that has entered your house from a world you cannot access. He looked at the lapels, the stitching, the way it fit her, like it had been chosen by someone who knew her measurements. He said, "That is a nice suit," she said. "Mrs. Henderson took me to her tailor. She said I needed something for interviews." He looked at the suit. He said nothing else. That night, after she left, he sat on the edge of the mattress and looked at his hands. The cracked knuckles, the callus on the right palm from the mop handle. The chemical stains that never fully washed out no matter how long he scrubbed. These hands had held her when she was born. These hands had turned the pages of library books and packed school lunches and written a check for a house he no longer owned. These hands had built every step between who she was and who she was becoming, and now someone else was dressing her for the life he was paying for with his body. He washed her laundry when she visited. He washed the suit someone else had bought. He folded it. He hung it in the closet beside his custodial uniforms. The navy blue suit beside the navy blue uniform. The difference between those two garments was the distance between his life and Diane Henderson's life, and Shayla was crossing that distance in one direction and not looking back. He did not say, "Stop going there." He did not say, "I am your father and you are forgetting where you came from." He did not say any of the things that formed in his chest on the nights when she mentioned Diane's name with the specific warmth that used to be reserved for him. He said nothing because saying it would have made him the obstacle between Shayla and the future he was destroying his knees to build. So he said nothing. He went to work. He came home. He ate bread. He looked at the photograph. He wrapped his knees. The bar exam results arrived on a Friday. Shayla called. She was crying. She had passed. He leaned against the wall of the courthouse stairwell, the one with the broken light, and he closed his eyes and his knees unlocked, and for one moment the body was not negotiating. The body was simply glad. She said, "There is a swearing-in ceremony next month. You will be there, right?" He said, "I will be in the front row." She said, "I love you, Dad." He said, "I know you do." He did not say that these were the most words she had said to him in a single phone call in over a year. He did not count. He was not a man who counted the things he was losing. He counted only the things he was building, and the thing he was building had just passed the bar. The morning of the ceremony, he woke without the alarm. He showered. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror and examined himself with an attention he normally did not allow. The gray at his temples had spread. The lines around his eyes were deeper than he remembered. His shoulders, which had once been wide enough to carry a 6-year-old on one side and a bag of groceries on the other, had narrowed. The body was compacting itself, folding inward, the way bodies do when they have been spending more than they take in for a long time. He put on the suit. He owned one suit. He had bought it 9 years ago for Shayla's high school graduation. It was dark gray, slightly too large now because of the weight he had lost. He tightened the belt. He put on the tie, a burgundy one Shayla had given him for Father's Day when she was 16. He fastened it with the clip she had given him the same year, a small silver bar with his initials engraved on the back. He looked at himself in the mirror, and the man looking back was someone who belonged at a ceremony. Someone whose daughter was about to become a lawyer. Someone who had earned the right to be in the room. He took the photograph from the nightstand drawer. He slipped it into the inside pocket of his jacket. He had planned what he would say when he saw her afterward. He had rehearsed it in his head on the bus rides home from the office park. "You did it, and I was here the whole time." He took the bus. He arrived 40 minutes early. He found the ceremonial courtroom. It was one he cleaned every morning, courtroom 4B, Judge Patterson's. He had mopped this floor 1,000 times. He had wiped these benches. He had emptied the trash cans and polished the rail of the jury box and vacuumed the carpet behind the judge's bench. He knew every scuff on the marble and every crack in the wooden gallery seats, and now he was sitting in one of those seats, not as the man who cleaned the room, but as the father of a woman who was about to take an oath in it. He sat in the 4th row, not the front. The front rows were reserved for families who had been invited to sit there, and he had not been told to sit in the front, and he did not want to be in the way. 4th row, aisle seat, close enough to see her face. The room filled. Families with flowers, mothers in dresses, fathers in suits, young attorneys in new clothes with new briefcases, and the specific posture of people standing at the beginning of something. He watched them, and he felt for the first time in years that the room he cleaned every morning was not his workplace. It was the place where the thing he had been building for 19 years was about to become real. When they called her name, Shayla Renee Hargrove, he gripped the edge of the bench. His hands, the ones that shook, were steady. He watched her stand. He watched her raise her right hand. He watched her say the words. He watched the judge nod. He watched her lower her hand. She was an attorney. The word entered the room and attached itself to his daughter's name, and the cost of that word was a house and 2 knees and 19 years of 350 mornings, and the cost was worth it. The cost had always been worth it. After the oath, the presiding judge invited several new attorneys to offer brief remarks. Shayla was among them. Quinton knew this because she had mentioned it on the phone, and he had replayed that part of the conversation in his mind 11 times. She walked to the podium. She adjusted the microphone. She looked out at the room. She was wearing the navy blue suit, the one Diane Henderson had bought. She looked like she belonged exactly where she was standing, and Quinton understood that this belonging was also something he had built, even if the materials had come from places he would never enter. She thanked the faculty. She thanked her classmates. She thanked the court. Then she paused. "I want to thank the woman who changed my life," she said. "The woman who showed me that I deserved a seat at the table. The woman who opened every door and made me believe I could walk through them. The woman who treated me like her own daughter." Quinton's body began to move. His knees, the knees that locked on stairs and swelled after shifts, those knees straightened. His back lifted. His hands released the bench. He was rising because his body knew before his mind what was happening. His body knew the way it knew the alarm before the alarm sounded. The way it knew the courtroom floor before the lights came on. "Mrs. Henderson, would you please stand?" He was halfway up when the name landed, Henderson. He looked to the second row. Diane Henderson was standing. Her hand was on her chest. Graham was beside her, smiling. Blake was holding his phone to record. Diane raised her hand in a small wave, composed and graceful, the wave of a woman accustomed to being acknowledged in rooms. Quinton sat down. The motion was small. The bench absorbed his weight without sound. The woman beside him was clapping. The man on his other side did not look over. No one noticed. No one looked at the man in the fourth row in a 9-year-old suit who had been halfway to standing and was now sitting with his hands flat on his thighs, very still, the tremor gone, because the hands had decided there was nothing left to shake for. The applause continued. Shayla smiled at Diane from the podium. The specific quality of that smile was something Quinton saw from the fourth row with the clarity of a man who had studied that face for 26 years across kitchen counters and in rearview mirrors and through cracked bedroom doors at night. It was a real smile. She meant it. He sat through the rest of the ceremony, the remaining remarks, the applause, the recessional. People stood around him. People hugged. People took photographs. The room filled with the noise of completion. He did not stand. He sat with his hands on his knees and the photograph in his jacket pocket and the words he had practiced. "You did it, and I was here the whole time." The words were still in his mouth. They had no place to go. He waited until the row was empty. He stood. He walked to the aisle. He walked toward the door. He did not look toward the podium. He did not look toward the second row. He walked the way he walked through the courthouse at 4:45 in the morning, efficiently, without unnecessary sound, the body doing what it had been trained to do in rooms where no one was expected to notice it. In the lobby, he stopped. Through the glass doors of the courtroom, he could see Shayla standing with the Hendersons. Diane had her arm around Shayla's shoulders. Graham was shaking her hand. Blake was beside her. They were laughing. Someone was taking a photograph. Shayla stood in the center of these people in the suit Diane had bought, and she looked like she belonged to them. Quinton looked at Diane's arm on his daughter's shoulders. He knew that position. His arm had lived there for 26 years, carrying her from the car when she fell asleep, steering her through parking lots, pulling her close on the porch swing while the crickets sang, and the library books sat in a stack between them. His arm had been the first shelter she ever knew, and now another arm was in its place, and she was not moving away from it. He pushed through the glass doors. He walked to the bus stop. He sat on the bench. He took the photograph from his jacket pocket and looked at it. Shayla at 6, missing teeth, grinning, holding the dictionary. On the back, his handwriting. She is going to be something this world is not ready for. She was. The world had gotten ready. He had not been included in the preparation. He rode the bus home. He changed out of the suit. He put on the custodial uniform. He wrapped his knees. He looked at the clock. He had 90 minutes before the evening shift at the office park. He made himself a piece of bread with margarine. He ate it at the counter. He did not sit down. Sitting down felt like agreeing to something he was not ready to agree to. He went to work. Quinton stopped looking at the photograph. He did not decide to stop. He simply did not reach for the drawer one night, and then he did not reach for it the following night, and the photograph migrated from the nightstand to the dresser to the bottom drawer, the way objects migrate when the meaning they carry becomes heavier than the hand can lift. He went to both jobs. He arrived on time. He cleaned the courtrooms and the offices with the same precision he had always brought. Because precision was the only thing he controlled, and controlling it was the only thing that kept the rest of him from coming apart. But something behind his eyes had shifted. The other custodians noticed it. No one said anything, because Quinton was the kind of man whose reliability made people assume his well-being, and reliability is the most effective mask there is. Alma Okonkwo noticed. Alma was 57. She had been a custodian at the Fulton County Courthouse for 9 years. She had come from Accra when she was 31 with a degree in education that no American school would recognize, and a willingness to work that did not require recognition. She was quiet in the way of people who observe more than they speak and who understand that watching someone carefully is sometimes more useful than asking them what is wrong. She did not ask Quinton what had happened. She did not say, "Are you all right?" She had been alive long enough to know that some people seal themselves shut when you knock, and that the door opens only if you stand near it without knocking long enough for the person inside to decide on their own. What she did instead was leave a thermos of soup on the shelf above his locker on a Monday morning. Groundnut soup with chicken, still hot. On the thermos, a piece of painter's tape with 4 words in blue ballpoint. "You forgot to eat again." Quinton opened his locker at 4:50 a.m. and saw the thermos. He stood looking at it. He picked it up. He could feel the heat through the metal. He read the note. He took it to the break room and sat down and opened it and drank. It was the first meal in weeks that he tasted. Not the act of eating, which he had continued the way you continue all mechanical processes. The tasting, the specific awareness of food as something meant to sustain rather than merely prevent collapse. The soup was seasoned in a way that belonged to someone else's kitchen, someone else's hands, someone else's history, and receiving it required nothing from him except stillness. He finished it. He washed the thermos. He returned it to Alma's locker with the tape still on it. He did not write a note back. Alma did not expect one. The thermoses continued. Every Monday, sometimes Wednesday, always warm, always with a note in blue ink on painter's tape. "Drink water before you wrap your knees. Your left boot is split, glue it tonight. You are limping again, sit for 10 minutes. He drank, he glued, he sat. He said nothing about any of it, and Alma asked nothing about any of it, and the two of them existed in a kind of silence that was not empty, but full of the specific thing that happens when one person decides to watch over another without asking for anything in return. On a Tuesday morning 6 weeks after the ceremony, Quinton's left knee gave out on the courthouse stairs. He was carrying a mop bucket up to the 3rd floor. The knee locked, then unlocked, then folded entirely. He fell. The bucket went over. Dirty water spread across the marble landing. He lay on his back on the stairs looking up at the fluorescent lights, and he could not get up. Not because the pain was too great, though it was. Because his body had made a decision that his mind had not authorized. His body had decided to stop. The security guard found him. The ambulance came. Grady Memorial, the ER doctor, younger than Shayla, told him the left knee required surgical repair. The right knee showed advanced degeneration. He was malnourished, and his blood pressure was high enough that the doctor used the word dangerous. Without softening it, the doctor told him to stop working 2 jobs. The doctor told him to eat. The doctor told him his body was not a machine, and even machines need maintenance. Quinton said, "I understand." He was discharged the next morning. He took the bus to the courthouse. He clocked in. He cleaned Judge Morrison's courtroom. His hands shook the entire time. He mopped the floor on one good knee and one knee that had been told to rest and had not been given permission to. Alma was waiting in the hallway when he came out. She looked at him. She looked at the way he was holding the doorframe with his right hand, not leaning, just touching, the gesture of a body that was making decisions its owner had not approved. She did not speak that morning, but over the following days she began asking questions. Small questions. When did you eat last? How many hours did you sleep? When is your next doctor appointment? He answered the way he answered everything, briefly. She listened the way she always listened, fully. She had a plan. She had not told him. She was a woman who acted before she announced, and the thing she was considering was not small. Alma Okonkwo had raised 4 children, all grown, all distant, not in affection but in geography, the way children of immigrants scatter across maps toward opportunities their parents built the runways for. She called them on Sundays. She had a phrase she carried with her from her mother in Accra, a phrase she did not translate into English because the translation would have lost the weight. But the closest she could get was this: the body speaks first. The mouth catches up when it is ready. She had been watching Quinton's body for months, the weight loss, the limping, the way he held walls. She had watched all of it, and she had said nothing because she had not yet known what to say. After he fell, she knew. She started with the food because food was immediate. She started with the union rep because workplace injury leave was a practical matter. But the thing that changed everything started with her son Kwaku and a laptop in her kitchen on a Thursday night. She asked Kwaku to find someone on the internet. She said, "The daughter of a man I work with. She is a lawyer. Her name is Shayla Hargrove." Kwaku found her in 40 seconds, LinkedIn. Shayla R. Hargrove, Associate, Henderson and Garrett LLP. Her profile photograph showed her standing in an office with glass walls, flanked by a silver-haired man in a charcoal suit and a woman with a strand of pearls and a practiced smile. They looked like a family. Shayla was in the center. She looked like she belonged. Alma studied the photograph for a long time. She looked at the woman with the pearls. She looked at Shayla's face. She recognized something she could not have articulated, but that she knew the way she knew when bread was done baking. Not by the timer, but by the smell. She recognized a daughter standing in the wrong family's portrait. Kwaku found the firm's phone number. Alma wrote it down. She called the next morning from the courthouse parking lot, sitting in her car with the engine off and the windows down. She asked for Shayla Hargrove. She was transferred. Shayla picked up on the 3rd ring. Her voice was professional, measured. Voice of a woman who had been trained to speak in rooms where every word was weighed. Alma said, "My name is Alma Okonkwo. I work with your father at the Fulton County Courthouse. He fell on the stairs last week. He was taken to the emergency room. His knees are failing. He is not eating enough. He has been working 2 jobs for 9 years to pay for your education. He did not call you because he would not know how to say what I am about to say, so I am saying it for him." She paused. She heard the silence on the line, the particular silence of a person who has been struck by something they did not see coming. "I have watched your father mop the same courtroom where you took your oath. He mops it every morning, courtroom 4B. He has mopped it for 11 years. He mopped it the morning of your ceremony, and he mopped it the morning after. The only difference was that on the morning after, he was limping and his hands were shaking. And he did not sing while he worked. He used to sing." She hung up. She had said what needed saying. She put her phone in her purse. She walked inside. She clocked in. She went to work. Shayla Hargrove stood in her office at Henderson and Garrett with the phone pressed to her ear and the line dead, and the sentence sitting in the center of her chest like something swallowed whole. He used to sing. She put the phone down. She looked at her hands. They were a lawyer's hands. Manicured, the nails shaped. A watch on the left wrist that Blake had given her for her birthday. No calluses, no chemical stains, no cracks. She thought about her father's hands. She did not decide to think about them. The thought arrived the way Alma's call had arrived, without permission. His hands, the rough palms. The cracked knuckles that bled in winter and that he covered with electrical tape because Band-Aids were not in the envelope. The specific warmth of those hands when he held her face as a child, cupping her cheeks while she cried over a math problem or a schoolyard insult. The steadiness of those hands turning pages of library books at bedtime. 1 page at a time, never rushing because the reading was not about the book. The reading was about the hands and the lap and the voice and the fact that someone was there. She thought about his hands, wrapping his knees every morning. With ace bandages, she had seen him do it once when she came home unannounced. Sitting on the edge of the mattress, bending forward, wrapping the left knee with the careful attention of a man performing a ritual he had performed 1,000 times. He did not know she was watching. She stood in the doorway and watched his hands move around the swollen joint. And she understood, in that moment, that his body was the price of her tuition. And she had looked away from that understanding, because looking at it directly would have required doing something about it. And she had not been ready. She thought about the ceremony. She thought about the pause before she said Mrs. Henderson's name. She thought about the expression she had decided not to look for in the 4th row. She had known he was there. She had seen the gray suit, the burgundy tie, the silver tie clip with his initials. She had seen him begin to rise. She had seen him sit back down. She had seen all of it. She had chosen not to see it. The choosing had not been a single moment. It had been years of small choices, each one a step in a direction that led away from a 1-bedroom apartment on Bankhead and toward a dining room that seated 12, and each step had been easier than the one before because the distance made the looking back harder and harder. And at some point, she had simply stopped turning around. She left the office at 2:00 in the afternoon. She did not tell anyone she was leaving. She drove across the city. She parked outside the apartment on Bankhead. She sat in the car for 4 minutes. She was not composing herself. She was dismantling something, the structure she had built between who she was and where she came from. And the dismantling was not quick because the structure had taken years to build and it did not come down willingly. She climbed the stairs. She knocked. Quinton opened the door. He was wearing the custodial uniform, his name on the chest, the Q with the loose stitching. His boots were on. His keys were clipped to his belt. He looked at her the way he looked at everything, directly, without rearranging his face to make the moment easier for her. He said, "I have work in an hour." She said nothing. He stepped aside. She walked in. 4 steps from the door to the kitchen counter. 3 steps from the counter to the mattress. The aspirin bottle by the sink. The ace bandages drying on the shower rod. The 2 custodial uniforms hanging on the back of the door, one washed, one waiting. The apartment that she had seen before but had never allowed herself to read the way she read case files, with attention, with the willingness to follow the evidence wherever it led. She opened the bottom drawer of the dresser. She did not ask permission. She found the photograph, herself at 6, holding the dictionary, grinning. She turned it over. His handwriting. She is going to be something this world is not ready for. She held it. Her hands were shaking, and the shaking was not a medical condition. It was the tremor of a person holding the full weight of something they had set down years ago and were only now picking up again. She sat on the floor, not the bed, not the chair by the counter, the floor, because the floor was what was available when the body stopped cooperating with the version of herself that had been standing in glass offices and sitting at tables that seated 12. She said, "I called her the woman who changed my life." He said, "I heard." She said, "You were in the room you clean every morning, and I thanked someone else." The silence held. Outside, a siren. Somewhere in the building, a television. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary afternoon in a city that did not know what was happening in this room on this floor. He sat down across from her, his back against the kitchen cabinet, his knees straight in front of him because bending them hurt. He left the distance between them because the distance was not hostility. It was the appropriate space of a man who had been carrying something alone for a very long time and needed to see what she would do with the space before he closed it. She said, "Miss Henderson bought me a suit. She introduced me to partners. She paid for my bar prep course. She gave me things you could not give me." He nodded. She said, "But you gave me the dictionary." He looked at her. You gave me the dictionary, and you gave me the house, and you gave me your knees, and you gave me every morning at 3:50 for 19 years, and I stood at that podium in a suit she bought and thanked her for the life you paid for." He did not speak. He did not need to. The room was small enough that the words reached him without effort, and the words were the truest thing she had said in years, and they both knew it. She put the photograph on the floor between them. He looked at it. Her face at 6, the missing teeth, the dictionary. She said, "You were right. I became something the world was not ready for. But you were the one who got me ready." He reached for the photograph. His hand, the one that trembled, was steady. He picked it up. He looked at it. He put it in the breast pocket of his uniform, the pocket over his heart, beside the pen he used to sign timesheets, and the small notebook where he tracked his hours. The photograph disappeared into the navy blue fabric, and Shayla watched it go and thought it had finally arrived where it was supposed to be. She stood. She went to the kitchen. There was bread. There was margarine. There were eggs. She took out the eggs. She found a pan. She turned on the stove. Quinton sat on the chair by the counter and watched his daughter make scrambled eggs in his apartment. He watched her hands. Lawyer's hands. Manicured. No calluses. They moved with care, cracking the eggs, stirring them in the pan, the specific gentleness of hands that had been taught to be careful with things that are fragile. He had taught her that. Not in law school. In this kitchen. In the old kitchen on the old street with the porch swing when she was small and he was young, and the dictionary was new, and everything was still possible. She set the plate in front of him the way he had set 1,000 plates in front of her. They ate. He asked about Alma. Shayla told him she wanted to thank her. He said, "She does not want thanks. She wants you to show up." Shayla looked at him. She understood. Showing up was not the suit or the podium or the speech. Showing up was eggs in a pan on a Tuesday afternoon. Showing up was a ride to the doctor and a phone call that lasted longer than 4 minutes, and the specific ordinary act of being present for a person who had been present for you every morning at 3:50 for 19 years without once asking you to notice. She washed the dishes. He dried them. They stood side by side at the small sink, and the apartment that had been built for one person held two, and it held them well enough. The following morning, Shayla pulled her car to the curb outside the apartment at 7. Quinton came out wearing a clean shirt and the dark gray suit pants because they were the only pants he owned that were not work pants. He got in. He put on a sisa belt. He held his hands on his thighs, thumbs down, the way he always held them, steady because someone was watching. They drove through the city. The morning was warm. A woman walked a dog. A man carried a child on his shoulders, life in its ordinary way. Quinton took the photograph from his pocket. He held it out to her. She took it. She looked at herself at 6. The missing teeth, the dictionary, his handwriting on the back. He said, "Keep it somewhere you can see it, so you remember who got you ready." She put it in the visor above the driver's seat, tucked into the clip where a mirror card or a parking pass might go. A photograph of a girl with a dictionary riding above the dashboard of a car driving toward a doctor's office on a Wednesday morning, carried by the daughter who finally understood what it had cost to keep. They did not hold hands. They did not need to. They drove in the same direction without discussing it, the way two people drive when they have decided to go together, and the deciding is the thing that matters, not the destination. Alma Okonkwo did not ask for thanks. She went to work the next morning the way she always did. She clocked in at 4:45. She cleaned courtroom 4B. She left a thermos of groundnut soup on Quinton's locker shelf with a piece of painter's tape on the lid. The tape said, "Eat before your appointment." She did not know that Shayla had come. She did not know about the eggs or the floor or the photograph in the pocket. She did not need to know. The knowing was not the point. The doing was the point. It had always been the doing. Some debts are not repaid in money or houses or gardens. They are repaid in mornings like this one. A car on a Wednesday. A doctor's appointment. Eggs in a pan. The quiet way a daughter sets a plate in front of her father. And the father eats, and the eating is not about the food. It is about the hands that made it and whose hands they learned from. And the fact that the learning was never lost, only misplaced and miss things. If you are patient, find their way back. Before you go, tell us, who is your Alma? Who showed up for you when the people who were supposed to be there were not? Tell us in the comments. We will see you in the next one.